Raider Nation, what is up? It's Skalko Branson back with a new edition of Silver and Black today. Hope your summer is going well. Are you ready for some football? Are you ready for some more Silver and Black today? By the way, thank you all for the great messages you sent out after our announcement earlier in the week about the show being back and the changes to it. Yeah, it's a solo show now. Again, my man Mo Moten's still my good buddy. And yes, I know a lot of you have asked questions. Will he come on the show from time to time? That all depends on his schedule. Of course, he is always welcome here. He is my brother. We had a great several years together here on the show, but we're moving forward with something a little different. And I'll tell you what, I'm so excited to be back with everybody, especially with the season coming up and what's going to happen with this Raider team. Yeah, I know everybody out there, some of you always believe the Raiders are going to go and win the Super Bowl that next year. But for those of us sitting more on the objective side of the fence or in the middle on the fence, if you will, I think this is going to be a really great growth year for this team. And so we're going to see how it goes. But today we're going to get into a subject we got to talk about. Now, it's interesting. I want to say this up front. When it comes to Fernando Mendoza, his possibility of playing in year one, I find most of Raider Nation is really level-headed on this. They say, don't rush the kid. Let him sit. Then there's a smaller percentage, but very vocal, and I've heard from you too, that said, no, you got to throw him out there. Kirk Cousins is ass, and Kirk Cousins is this, and Kirk Cousins is that. Well, I'm going to lay out the case today on why Fernando Mendoza will not start the season at quarterback, which I think most of us agree on. But here's the thing. There's the hype. There's the T-shirts. There's the endorsement deals. You're going to see some fans, not all of you, but some in Raider Nation are going to want Fernando Mendoza to get off the bench quickly. And I'm going to lay out the case on why that's bad and why, not just my opinion. No. The evidence shows that that isn't what the Raiders need to do. And I don't believe they will do. But here's the thing. You're also going to be inundated with your favorite folks. Yes, the national media is going to come out and they're going to push a narrative around Fernando Mendoza. They're going to push this competition angle with Kirk Cousins. Now, anything can happen, but I will tell you this. Kirk Cousins will be the starter. We'll get into it, and that's what this show is about. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. We are now part of the Believe Network, just a great network of all kinds of podcasts, including my brothers and sister over at Raider Nation Radio, Murph and the crew. They are also part of the same network. So we're part of the same family now, but make sure you subscribe wherever you get it. The feed hasn't changed. So if you already subscribed to Silver and Black today, then you're listening to me right now. You already get the show. So thanks for staying with us. If you didn't and now you got to resubscribe, go ahead and do it. If you're watching us on YouTube or wherever you're watching us, make sure you subscribe there, hit that thumbs up button, put on the notifications so you know anytime we have a new show. But listen, it's not a hot take to say that Fernando Mendoza won't start for the Raiders. And I want to lay out the case of why some people believe he should, right? I'm going to start with that right now, which is number one, he was the number one overall draft pick. You don't draft somebody that high and then don't play him. That doesn't hold water. And let me tell you why. If you look at it, Mendoza follows, I think, some of the successful quarterbacks, the younger guys we've seen out. Now, there are always examples to the contrary, but let's start with a few of them, starting with your favorite quarterback, right? Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes comes into the NFL in 2017. Did he start? No, he was on the bench. In fact, he sat the entire 2017 season behind one Alex Smith. Then let's switch over to Green Bay, the Packers. Jordan Love. Jordan Love sat 3 years. And now look what Jordan Love has done. I know he hasn't won a Super Bowl, hasn't gone and had this amazing career, but there's no question Jordan Love is the franchise quarterback in Green Bay. 3 years he sat, right? So you have that. You had Aaron Rodgers there and so on. So I think you look at that. Then let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the most successful teams in the NFL at this point. Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts sat too. Jalen Hurts is now the face of the franchise, and Jalen Hurts started the 2020 season as the second string quarterback, right? Now he's on a $255 million deal. So I think sitting for a bit worked out just fine for Jalen Hurts. So again, this is why I talk about the Fernando Mendoza dynamic. Then Aaron Rodgers himself. Let's go back. Let's go in the time machine, Raider Nation, and check out Aaron Rodgers. You remember sitting behind Brett Favre. And that worked out pretty good for Aaron Rodgers. And don't look at the Aaron Rodgers of now at the end of his career, not performing where he used to. Still one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game. So again, that's pillar number one of my argument on why this idea of why a high draft pick should play. Second is, well, Cousins was brought in as a bridge. He's not a starter. Well, that's just not true. I think if you look at what Kirk Cousins has been able to do, specifically with Klint Kubiak, and we're going to get really deep into that later, then you understand why Kirk Cousins is the perfect fit for this. I know he doesn't excite everybody out there. He's not that young kid like Mendoza coming in, Heisman Trophy, national championship. But Kirk Cousins, if he can stay healthy as his years pile up, then he is the guy who's a starter. And I think that is one of the things you did. He didn't come to Las Vegas to hold a clipboard, right? Kirk Cousins didn't come to be just a guy in the room to mentor Fernando Mendoza. Clearly, he'll be there and have a strong influence. We've already seen it. We've heard it from Mendoza. We've heard it from other players on the Raiders on their roster for 2026, that he indeed is an amazing influence, not only on Mendoza, but on the entire team. So yes, I get that. But he's not here to be a clipboard holder. If the Raiders just wanted somebody to hold the clipboard and be a mentor to the young quarterback, they wouldn't have gone for a Kirk Cousins. Chase Daniel, somebody like that, some other retread who they didn't necessarily want to compete for a starting job to come in and just be a guy in the room. That clearly is not Kirk Cousins. Now, the third pillar is you, really. Now, everybody is excited about Fernando Mendoza. My house is excited about Fernando Mendoza. Of course, the first Cuban quarterback in the NFL, the first Cuban-American quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy. My wife is Cuban-American. So that whole thing, believe me, is exciting, what's going on. And the kid is just infectious. He's such a good kid that fans want to move on. They are so excited in Raider Nation that they want that young quarterback, and they want him now. I get that. But again, that doesn't hold water for the NFL. When's the last time an NFL team developed its players based on what fans wanted? It just doesn't happen. That's not disrespect towards Raider Nation or fans in general in the NFL. That's just the reality of it. You don't hurry along and asset somebody that can be as good, he's got a lot to prove, as Fernando Mendoza. So no matter how much fans want him in there and want him to start, and I made a video earlier in the summer where I said, hey, I could see him starting after week 8. If the Raiders are out of it or Kirk Cousins gets injured, knock on wood, you don't want anybody to get injured, then perhaps you could see him then. People also forget you have Aiden O'Connell there, who is a veteran now, not a frontline starter in the NFL. In my view, I've said that very clearly over the last 2 years, but you also have him there. So you don't need to rush Mendoza in, even if things are struggling for Kirk Cousins, or even if he has an injury and can't play. So that's exactly the first point I want to make here when it comes to Fernando Mendoza. Look, everybody's excited. Wear your Fernando t-shirts. Do all that stuff. There's nothing wrong. This is the guy who's going to lead this franchise into the future, right? But this whole optimism about, well, he could start, just doesn't hold water based on the evidence and based on the moves and the history. Again, pure evidence here, folks, in this court of public opinion, in this court of Raider Nation. This is not going to be something that I think happens as we go on. Now let's get into the real argument, one that's got the real teeth here, of why Fernando Mendoza isn't going to be and shouldn't be the starter in Las Vegas this year for your Raiders. And that is what Klint Kubiak's offense truly demands here, because this is really a key argument and why you don't want to ruin a young quarterback. It's happened so many times in the NFL, and I'll give you examples on that. But Klint Kubiak's system is rooted in that Shanahan tree. And the QB requirements of this offense just aren't rookie friendly. It takes time. You have to lead up to it, no matter how smart Fernando Mendoza is. No matter how talented he may be, even with his deficiencies, it's just not a system friendly to young quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'll tell you why. First of all, under center reps. You heard this from the great beat reporters and the folks on the ground there in Henderson during training camp and OTAs, which is with a wide zone play action offense that is something that Klint Kubiak lives on. You got to play under center. And Fernando Mendoza in 2025, 26, with Indiana on that run, didn't take snaps under center. In fact, if you look at college football overall now, most of these guys are not. It's overwhelmingly shotgun operators in college football now. That does not lend itself well to transitioning into an offense like Klint Kubiak. So that's a key point. And again, so you might say, well, then why would they take a guy? Well, guess what? They took Fernando Mendoza, best player on the board, best quarterback they could get. But this is a college issue. College football, as I said, mostly shotgun operators now. And so that's going to be something that you have to keep an eye on here. But in that offense, if you can't play under center, and I shouldn't say can't play. Let me take that back. What I should say, if you haven't played a lot under center, then that's going to be a big adjustment. That's why they started working on it with Fernando early in rookie camp and then OTAs. And as we get into training camp here in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see that as well. And that's where these reps for him, when he gets them, are going to be so important in camp, is for him to be able to adjust to the opportunity to play under center there. But that's it. Now, the other thing here too, and this is the real big deal, and I think Fernando Mendoza, because of his intelligence, his football intelligence, he's clearly a cerebral guy. I know some of you want to harp on him being geeky and all that. Who cares? He's a smart guy. Look at a lot of the quarterbacks in the NFL who went on to have Hall of Fame careers. They were the same way. But pre-snap identification, ID, and full field progressions. This is hard. And for those of you, and I'm not a big film guy, there's some great content creators out there, especially in Raider Nation, like Tape Don't Lie. Those guys break this down for you. If you want to learn more about it, I recommend you go there. But if you look at Kubiak's play action system, his shots require the quarterback at that point to sell a fake, right? Inside, to sell that fake, work through a defined progression while resetting the platform, right? So the quarterback's processing has to be so quick in this offense. And this is what's key. The quarterback can be successful. You have to look at a quarterback and his skill sets, but you also have to look at the system by which he's going to be playing in and what he's going to be asked to do. Now, you look at that, rookies get eaten alive in the first several weeks of the NFL season running an offense like that because, first of all, the first thing a rookie has to do is get used to the speed of the NFL. All rookies, doesn't matter what position, they have to get used to the speed of the NFL. Then they got to get used to then processing. That's going to take time. Why would you rush that? You wouldn't rush it. And I think that is another key point here with why Fernando Mendoza should not be the starter. And then that all culminates in sort of this cadence that you see with quarterbacks in the system. In Kubiak's system, cadence and protection calls at the line, okay? So again, this is the identification. This is the knowing what you're looking at, knowing NFL schemes, knowing what NFL defenses are going to throw at a quarterback and at an offense. You got to be able to process that. And that burden on a young quarterback is overwhelming. Not saying Fernando Mendoza is eventually going to overcome that and learn it. I think he will. Again, you won't find anybody more bullish on him than I am. But it takes time. Why would you rush it? This goes back to what Tom Brady said last summer about the fact that he thinks the NFL, and we're seeing a lot more pundits and experts, analysts start to come around on the fact that NFL quarterbacks by far are being too rushed. And the thing to remember here too is if you're a Raiders fan, you want your team to win. Kirk Cousins is an elite processor. He is elite at doing this. He's done it for a long time, and that's why it favors him. That's why Kirk Cousins coming to the Raiders was such a big deal, because he's a guy who can step right in and do that. And then Fernando Mendoza can watch and see and understand before he's asked to do it, before the responsibility and that burden falls to him. But that's it. The Kubiak offense is just difficult. It's difficult from the perspective of the quarterback. You need somebody who's done it. Now, if you look at Kubiak and Cousins, as you know, they have a history together. And I want to use an example of a Raider quarterback, because how difficult is this system to come in and get used to master, to run efficiently so that you can reach your peak potential as a quarterback. And I go back to a guy you're familiar with. Yes, Derek Carr. Remember him? 10 years with the Raiders? Well, Derek Carr, 2024, went to the New Orleans Saints, as you know. Who was his offensive coordinator? Klint Kubiak. And that offense that he installed there, the Kubiak offense, which you'll see in Las Vegas this season, that offense requires footwork-based installation, right? So you're going to have to work on your footwork. Very difficult. Something that all NFL quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks with very few, I think, outliers, struggle with when they first get in the league, especially in an offense where it's all footwork-based. And how long it takes a veteran, now, not a rookie, Derek Carr, a veteran quarterback, how long did it take him to get comfortable under center? That was a 10-year vet, and he had visible, if you go back and look at it, and I went back and read, I don't know, a half dozen stories about Derek Carr's early time in New Orleans, especially early in that season, how many times he had issues with timing. Now, this is Derek Carr. I know for you guys out there who don't like Derek Carr, you're going to say, well, he sucks. That's not it. He's a veteran quarterback, had a good career. But I will tell you this, if a 10-year veteran is struggling with timing and footwork in Klint Kubiak's offense, how is that going to be for Fernando Mendoza? Right? So again, this is another point. This is all evidence. This is not just my opinion. This is looking at the system and the player and matching them up. That's why Klint Kubiak does so well. You look at the national coverage back to 2023, when Kirk Cousins and Kubiak were paired in Minnesota, and it says here he had a pre-existing comfort in that wide zone play action system. Cousins fit right in there, so he instantly got there. And the offense, if you go back and you look at the statistics, you look at the coverage, especially throughout that season, it just, that offense in Minnesota hummed. Yes, they had some pieces the Raiders don't currently have, but the Raiders have good offensive pieces. So Kirk Cousins, again, stays healthy. He should be able to get this thing moving. He's got the familiarity with this offense. He knows how to make it run, and not only make it run, but make it run at a very, very high level. So to me, it makes all the sense in the world. It wasn't a scheme innovation for him when he walks in. He walks in, he was an operator familiar with that system. And when you're an operator familiar with the system, there's instant comfort level. You have the timing down. You know the footwork involved. So it's just like easing into that, your favorite jacket, right? Or your favorite shirt or your favorite pair of shoes, whatever it is. It just feels comfortable. So a lot of the stress, a lot of the angst around a new system, a new team, whatever, goes away. And that's what we saw with Cousins in 2023. We saw the struggles for Carr in 2024. So if you look at the middle of that equation, it's like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea to rush Fernando Mendoza along, especially in this offensive system. And the Raiders know that. Credit to John Spytek, credit to Klint Kubiak for going out and getting a quarterback they know can jump right in and run it at a very high level. So you should look at that. So to me, if I'm a fan, I'm a member of Raider Nation, I'm a little more excited about Kirk Cousins than I was before I knew this information, right? It's just the preponderance of evidence of what he's been able to do in the system when he's healthy is very, very good. Now, again, I'm not saying the Raiders are making the playoffs because I don't believe they will. I know. You're not going to like that. But they should do better. I think people are sleeping on them a little bit. They got a tough schedule. But with Cousins and that comfort level in that offensive system, it should be pretty good. Now, lastly, on the evidence I want to present to you on why I know and you should believe that Fernando Mendoza should not start for the Raiders nor play a significant amount of time even early in the season is the historical comps here. We talked earlier about quarterbacks that were rushed along too fast. Some quarterbacks who had pretty good talent. Again, not every quarterback comes out, is going to win a Super Bowl, is going to be an MVP, is going to be a Hall of Famer, right? You're looking for a starting quarterback, you're looking for a franchise quarterback, whatever. But you look at some of the cautionary tales on guys who were rushed, right? And we got to start with the New York Jets. They're good at this, aren't they? Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's a great example. 2021 comes in week 1. He's the starter. His career was completely derailed and he never recovered. Never recovered. Now, again, some of you out there are going to argue he wasn't that good to begin with. Doesn't matter. Excuse me. Even a quarterback who could be a serviceable starter in the NFL has value. So maybe Zach Wilson was going to be that guy. Maybe Zach Wilson was going to be a superstar. We don't know. But they derailed him in New York. Again, New York Jets are perhaps one of the masters of ruining quarterbacks. Geno Smith, who they now have back, and you had your experience with last year. Another good example of that too. Trey Lance, 21-22, 49ers. Again, this is the same system, the Shanahan Kubiak system. Very complex system. He got the injury early as well. But if you look at a $24 million hard lesson to swallow in San Francisco, that was it. Trey Lance was not ready. He was not ready from a physical standpoint. He was not ready from a maturity standpoint. And he was not ready to jump into that Shanahan Kubiak system. It ruined him. And look, he never recovered and bounced along the league. Now, Bryce Young in Carolina. Some want to hold on to the fact that Bryce Young could still be good. Maybe that's true. But Bryce Young was rushed. They get him to Carolina, first overall pick, just like Fernando Mendoza, and he was benched in year 2. He's still struggling, still trying to prove himself. Not only that, they threw him behind a terrible offensive line. Who does that to a rookie? You just can't do that to a rookie quarterback. It ruins them, and we've seen that with Bryce Young. Then, one of the worst examples for so many reasons, Anthony Richardson in 2023, the most overhyped draft pick in history, in my view. In fact, we were live on the radio for that draft, and I said Anthony Richardson will never make it in the NFL. He'll be a tight end. Well, he didn't even become a tight end. We'll see if maybe he resurrects his career doing that. But Anthony Richardson, the same way, he had health and developmental issues. He could never recover. They expected way too much out of that kid because of his athletic ability. Amazing athlete. Remarkable. Just turn your head kind of athlete. I get it. He had no experience in college. Then he's rushed into the NFL. Imagine that. Fernando Mendoza had 5 years in college, okay? And he's not ready. Imagine Anthony Richardson, barely a year in college of starting, and then he's thrown as a starter in the NFL for the Colts. Terrible, terrible stuff. So that's again. But on the other side of the coin, as I just gave you the examples of guys who should have sat but didn't, and they were ruined because of it, now we go back to the examples of guys who sat and who have benefited. We got Patrick Mahomes again, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, the 3 I mentioned earlier. Mahomes sat 2017, MVP 2018. Jordan Love, 3 years, now franchise quarterback. Jalen Hurts started in 2020 as the second string, now the face of the franchise. And even Brock Purdy, yes, Mr. Irrelevant. He sat until circumstances opened. There was injuries. They ran out of quarterbacks. And then he got his opportunity, but he wasn't rushed. And so to me, it's not a pattern that's subtle, folks. If you look at this pattern, it's remarkable because yes, fans, guys who hold podcasts, guys who write about the Raiders, journalists, we're not NFL executives. We're not talent scouts. But the overwhelming evidence shows that when you rush a young quarterback along, it derails their career, or at the very least, it sets them back significant number of years. Sam Darnold, good example, right? Another high draft pick, goes to the Jets, gets ruined there, bounces around, works his way back, ends up winning a Super Bowl. And again, not an MVP guy, not a Hall of Famer, but it goes to show you when he got in the right system and he got the right amount of experience as a veteran, things started to happen for him. And I think that that's it. But if you look at it, rushed rookies more than not fail. Overwhelming numbers. Patient rookies and this is the key, patient rookies in stable systems. This is why the Raiders, despite the history of the million coaches and all the different regimes that have been in that front office for the Raiders, that's why this system, coaching staff, front office, leadership at the top, has to remain stable. You can't find franchises at all in any sport that aren't stable that succeed. And that is because they have a plan, they follow it, they hire well, and they stick to it. And I think that's what the Raiders are on. That's why it's more exciting than in the past. I know. I've sat before you before and said, this feels different. And I wrote a whole story up on sportsnot.com about that, about why it feels different and why it actually is different. So, but the key here is the Raiders have to stick with that. And that's important for Fernando Mendoza's development. They're going to have to have a stable environment for this young guy to reach his full potential and what he can be. Now, you might say, well, yeah, Scott, you're talking about this and you're saying this and that, but you're not the coach. You're not Klint Kubiak. What has he been saying? Has he opened the door at all? Has he said something that might make you think that, no, there's a shot? I mean, who knows? They could be blown away in training camp. Well, I'm going to give you a course in coach speak and media speak and why even what the coaches are saying and things to look for, by the way, as we get ready for camp. Again, rookies get to camp July 23rd and the veterans on the 26th. So it's right around the corner. The long football drought is almost over, Raider Nation, especially after the bad taste you had in your mouth last year, which hopefully you're feeling better about now. But I will tell you that there are things to look for. And here's some examples. Let's talk about coaches. They telegraph everything. The key is to listen and to look for what it is they're telegraphing, right? So now if you talk about the history of the NFL, the quarterback taking the majority of first team snaps in the second or third week of training camp. So now we're talking into August. That's the week one starter. So you don't need anybody to tell you who's the starter. Just listen and read the good journalists we got on the ground there in Henderson covering this team every day. Okay? They'll tell you who's getting all the snaps. That's where you'll see it as well. Beat reporters report daily on this. They'll give you, they get to see a little bit of practice. They get to report on practice. If it shows Cousins is taking all those snaps, there's no question. You can just put it to bed and don't have to worry about it. Now, again, the national media will continue. Fernando Mendoza is a product for the NFL. Don't get me wrong. That's how current sports, professional sports works, even college sports. He is an asset to the league. He's a great young guy. So guess what? They're going to, whenever they can, they're going to talk about Fernando Mendoza. And that means speculating. That means all sorts of things. So you'll see that. But all you got to do is look at who's getting the bulk of the first team work. That's the depth chart. Okay. But let's get into some more. I wrote some down, some coach speak decoders. Ready? Now, I don't have the Commander Cody decoder ring for those of you old enough to remember what that is. But here's what the tells will be. If you hear Klint Kubiak, if you hear any of the other coaching staff saying these things, or even John Spytek, he doesn't speak to the media very much, but he might during camp. Here it is. We're going to let the competition play out. That's number one. Coach, we're going to let the competition play out. Translation, the veteran wins, right? That's all Cousins. Second, they're going to ask about Fernando Mendoza. They're going to ask about his development. How fast is he picking up the offense? How's he doing out with his reps at practice? Fernando's picking up things quickly, but there's a lot to learn. Okay. Translation, he ain't ready. Okay. It's a nice way of saying that. It's a nice way of encouraging the player without discouraging him by saying he's struggling, if he struggles. Okay. Then you'll see this. You've already heard something to the same effect of this. Kirk gives us the best chance to win right now, which is probably what you'll hear towards the end of camp. That means the game's over. If you hear that, he gives us the best chance, I don't need to tell you, that's pretty self-evident. But if Kubiak says that, it's over. Kirk Cousins is your starter. which I think is a 98.999% chance that he will be the starter. And any reference you hear to Mendoza's development timeline or growth, that means he's sitting. Development timeline means you're not ready. That means you're developing. And I know most of you out there are okay with that. And I'm not arguing that you shouldn't be or that you aren't. But those are the telltale signs from the coach that that it's all Kirk Cousins, which is what's going to happen. Now you can come back and tell me I'm an idiot if I'm wrong, but I won't be. And again, these are some of the coach speak tells for you to look for when it comes to the Raiders and the quarterback situation. Now, in the off chance, because there's always a chance, nothing is ever impossible, right? So you have to have your mind open enough to say, well, something crazy could happen. Now, outside of injuries, again, knock on wood for the Raiders, what other things could happen? Fernando Mendoza could go out there and suddenly be a savant, pick up everything way faster than anybody thought, and suddenly it's a different ballgame. But unless you hear things like, he's shown us he can handle it, or what's the other one I wrote down? The offense moves differently when he's out there. You know, the offense moves differently. The offense looks different when he's out there. That tells you that he's found something and they're seeing something that they were not expecting. But if he's getting first team reps in joint practices, Fernando Mendoza, then there's something to that. But again, I think all three of those opportunities or outcomes won't happen. But if you start to hear things like that, then suddenly, boy, this guy might be something special, and he's doing something that not even the coaching staff or the franchise, the organization thought he could do. So those are the things to look out for. But I think if you look at, and I got to look at my notes here, the pattern across the entire coaching tree for Klint Kubiak, I think gives us some caution when it comes to young quarterbacks. I mentioned one earlier with Shanahan and Trey Lance sat behind Garoppolo, despite Lance being the number 3 overall. And of course, that didn't work out. McVay, part of that tree as well. He has not rushed guys, especially developmental guys. He brings them along very slow. And even though I know he didn't work out, McDaniel down in Miami, he didn't rush Tua. Tua ended up crapping out on his own, but Tua was not installed as the starter until McDaniel felt he had full command of the offense. So there's one. And I think if you look at coverage, if you really want to go geeky deep on it, look at coverage of those teams, of the Trey Lance situation in San Francisco, of the situations in Los Angeles with developmental players under McVay, and then, of course, with Tua in Miami. And you'll see that the beat writers covering those teams talked a lot about it. They talked about the mental load of the pre-snap operation and how difficult it is. It's too heavy of a layer to put on top of a rookie quarterback just trying to get up to speed in the NFL, because that's what you hear from all players, all rookies, right? Is how much faster it goes, how much faster things develop, offense, defense, all of it. So to ask a rookie to do that as well. Then you look at the scouting reports coming out of college for Fernando Mendoza, Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, all talked about the idea that Mendoza was going to take time to develop, that he wouldn't come into the league as a first-day starter because he operated out of the shotgun all the time. He had no under center experience, and that is a big deal. That's a matter of public record. Just go back and look what those guys said. Some of the criticisms of Fernando Mendoza, I think, are off the deep end, but those two guys I respect, and those guys both, at the core of their evaluation of Fernando Mendoza, said he's going to take time to develop. He's still worthy of the overall number 1 pick, but don't expect him to come in and be the first-day starter, which is what the Raiders have done. That's how it's all unfolded. The other thing here, too, to consider when you're looking at this is the offensive line. Now, look, Tyler Linderbaum, yes, exciting, but there's still a lot of question marks with this offensive line. You don't put a rookie quarterback that doesn't have under center experience, one thing on top of another, behind an offensive line that you're not completely sure of. Okay? The offensive line could be better, should be better, but there are still question marks when you look at this. Colton Miller's anchoring that left side. You got Linderbaum, but the rest of it, we don't know. I'm a little more positive about where this offensive line could go, but we don't know. And the last thing a rookie needs to do is be behind an offensive line, even if it's better, that's gelling. Because we know, and you guys know too well, Raider offensive lines, even when they've been good, when they come together, that unit, it's not an easy position. People call them the big uglies up front and the dumb guys and all that. They're not. They're smart. They got, especially in today's NFL and under Klint Kubiak's offense, that offensive line is going to take time to gel. And because of that, you don't want a rookie quarterback behind that. Now, I'm not saying throw Cousins back there so if they're not very good, he gets hammered, because you don't want anybody to get injured. But I will tell you that it's a big deal. Again, I go back to the Bryce Young example I used at the top of the show. They throw Bryce Young into Carolina. Excuse me. They throw Bryce Young into Carolina behind a brutal offensive line. And he just got hammered, never recovered, and probably won't ever. I hate to be that negative about a player. I just don't think Bryce Young's going to make it. But that's why you don't put Fernando Mendoza back there at quarterback either. Just the way it is. So again, that's my verdict. Fernando Mendoza should not be and will not be the starter for the Las Vegas Raiders on September 12th in week 1 when Las Vegas kicks off its season. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not because Fernando Mendoza isn't the long-term answer. He is the long-term answer. But you see it and you look at the reasons. Number one, the Kubiak system rewards experience, and it rewards people that can be comfortable in that situation. It punishes excessively rookie mistakes. You don't want that. Second, the Raiders' offensive line and the skill position group is not built to insulate a rookie. Okay? Not saying it's going to be terrible. Not saying that, but it's not built in a way for a rookie quarterback to slot right in and get out there and do that. Number three, the Raiders and Cousins, they came to an agreement. They signed him to play, not to mentor. And we heard this during camp, right? We heard Kirk Cousins kind of say it. We even heard Klint Kubiak refer to it as well. Then, fourth, the historical data on rushing young quarterbacks is brutal. It proves my point. It proves the Raiders are on the perfect trajectory and plan to protect and to develop their young quarterback, Fernando Mendoza. Don't forget that. All you got to do is look at the data. People always want proof. Prove it. Look at the numbers. And again, you can come at me with examples where it did work, and there are some. But the overwhelming numbers show that it doesn't work a majority of the time. Then, lastly, Mendoza's long-term development is better served by watching, by learning, and taking over when he's ready. What's the hurry? The Raiders are not a championship caliber team right now. The goal is to get them there. The goal is to improve this franchise into a consistent winner that challenges for their fourth Super Bowl trophy. If you're going to do that, why would you rush it? I know all of us out there on our damn phones, we're constantly rushing, wanting to do this, wanting to do that. We got no attention span in this society anymore. That's a whole different video I could make. But with this football team, especially with the last 3 decades, all of what you've seen as a Raider fan, the futility, yes, a couple of blips on the radar, 2002, so on. But you look at this is why the Raiders have not been good for so long, because they have not had a consistent plan that they've stuck to that made sense. They now have the biggest piece they need, which is a young franchise quarterback. So why the hell would you rush him? It would make no sense. Why? Because you want to wear his jersey? No. It's about developing him, letting him take over when he's actually ready. Plain and simple, folks. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could disagree. And if you disagree, leave comments below. Give me an argument. Better yet, send me a video. Okay. We have our shows we're going to have on Fridays during the season too, where we're going to take just calls and videos. You want to send a video? Give me your 1 to 2 minute argument on why I'm wrong and why Fernando Mendoza should start. Okay. You email that to mail, M-A-I-L, at silverandblacktoday, all spelled out, silverandblacktoday.com, or you can call 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869 and leave a voicemail. Do some video though. That'd be better for our YouTube viewers so they don't have to look at me all the time. So make the argument, but I don't see how it is. My verdict is if he plays at all during 2026, it'll be somewhere between week 8 and 12, only if Cousins is injured, only if the Raiders are completely out of the playoff picture, which I hope for your sake it's not. Or if Mendoza somehow forces the issue at practice. That's always possible. I can't take that off the table. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. So that's it. And I think that the team falls out of contention, then things get a little different. But if Kirk Cousins does well, doesn't get injured, he might go the whole distance, even if the Raiders are not doing well. Now, I can see some mop-up time here and there, but don't look for Fernando Mendoza to start. And again, I go back to, and there's been some stories recently, including this week, about Aiden O'Connell. What's his role? It's not a bad thing that the Raiders have 3 quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell's as slow as molasses. I've always liked the kid, all that stuff. So Aiden O'Connell, I think, would play more than even Fernando Mendoza this year. Why not? Again, let him learn the system. It punishes rookies too much. Let him get all that he can and absorb so that he's ready to go when they actually need him. The evidence doesn't care about week 1 hype, folks. So when you're watching NFL Network or ESPN or Fox or wherever you're watching, and they're blah, 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 Fernando Mendoza, because the name's going to generate revenue for them. And it's going to generate viewers and clicks and all that stuff. Don't buy it. Just know that your quarterback, your future quarterback, needs the time to develop. Don't force the issue. Don't force him into a situation where he can't be as successful as he can without some experience, without getting used to that offense and understand all that stuff. To me, the 2026 season for Fernando Mendoza becomes that 2017 season that Mahomes had. Sat behind Alex Smith, and by the time he was asked to take the reins, what did he do? He became the MVP the next year. Again, I know the Chiefs examples kill you out there, but it's a good one, and I think he should be that guy. I think that's what the Raiders should do. So there you go. That's my 43-minute argument on why Fernando Mendoza won't start, shouldn't start, and why letting him sit and learn, especially with the circumstances around the offense, is the perfect thing. And for the Raiders, for you guys, for Raider fans, for Raider Nation, want some wins this year, right? Yes. Kirk Cousins, I think, gives them the opportunity to do that. Let's hope that Achilles and everything else stays healthy for him throughout the season. Whew. There you go. Our first full show back. We appreciate you guys being with us and for joining us now on the Believe Network. Do me a favor. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black Today. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like the video, give us that thumbs up. Also subscribe there and put on the notification so you know every time we have a new video. I'm also doing a lot more short videos as well, so look for those throughout the week. And we'll be a little spotty on the schedule up until camp starts, and then we'll get into our regular rotation of shows. Don't forget to call in. Leave me your voicemails. You can start doing that right away. 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Try to be as short as possible. Give me your argument, give me your point, and then move on so we can get as many calls. You know, you can go up to 2 minutes, but if you can do it faster, that's great. We just be able to get more people on. But this year too, I want video. Show us your face. You faceless people out there who I don't know unless you call in. I know your voice. I don't know your face. send in your video. Try to shoot it horizontal, but you can shoot it vertical. I don't really care. We'll work with whatever you send us. But send us a 1 to 1.5 minute video of what you want to say, or shorter, doesn't matter, to mail, M-A-I-L. That's mail at silverandblacktoday.com. Mail at silverandblacktoday, all spelled out, .com. And we'll use those videos right here on the show. So if you're listening, you'll hear them. If you're watching, you'll see them. All right. Thanks for being back with me, Raider Nation. Excited to be back. I'm excited about this season. I think it'll be an up and down season, but I do think the Raiders are on the right track finally. And it's going to be fun sharing that with you. For everybody here at Believe and at Silver and Black Today, thanks for being with us. We will see you sometime next week, everybody. Take care, Raider Nation.